Ah yes, fashionably late to the party on this one. If you've been here a while, you might be saying to yourself, hey, that incredibly suave individual T-Gimlet already did this video. But I'd argue that while I did go over sparks in a vacuum, I didn't go over all the secret tips and tricks on how to get good parents, now did I? And no, I'm not running out of ideas, I don't know, I think that. You ever take a look at a unit in Global and ask yourself how such things can be possible? Well, the answers can be complicated, and probably sound like support cards, or good RNG, or other things that evade me, but another factor that can't be ignored is the sparks you get from inheritance units, or parents, or legacy units, or whatever else they're called. For this video, I'll just call them legacy units. As you can see, I've got 2 legacy units with only stamina sparks between them, including the ones from their legacy units. And as we can also see here from what we're getting just from the beginning of training, that's quite impactful. Imagine if I was any good and I had anything else. Before we really get into it, let me just say that building legacy units is totally optional, and you don't have to build perfect ones unless you're aiming to retain your class 6 status, which is physically impossible for even your favorite YouTuber to do. If you're a beginner, then you can just consider this a bit of an advanced lesson. You don't have to be perfect with this if you're just starting, so don't take it too much as a if I'm not doing this, I'm falling behind situation. So let's once again go over sparks, in greater detail even. To give another brief rundown, you get sparks at the end of your training that, if you use for a legacy unit, have a chance of making your new units stronger. Sparks come in blue, pink, green, and white variants and represent stats, aptitudes, unique skills, and skills or stat boosts respectively. You gain these benefits at the beginning of training and at the 2 inheritance events in the 2nd and 3rd year of your training period, and naturally, the higher the star count, the better benefits you get. For blue sparks, the higher star count equates to a higher number boost in that relevant stat. Pink represents how much of a boost to that style or track type your aptitude goes up by, and on green and white they represent how much of a boost or skill hint discount you get depending on what exactly the white spark is in particular. Naturally, star counts being high is what you want. So how do we get them higher? Well, since Tachyon doesn't feel like showing up yet, the only real way is to game the system with a high degree of RNG. Some sparks also have different requirements to even reach 3 stars. Blue sparks require you to have at least 600 in that stat, for example, but several respectable sources say that over 1100 is where you actually want to be. Pink sparks require you to be at least A tier in a given aptitude, and green sparks require you to be at least a 3-star unit. Pretty difficult. White sparks you can sorta kinda manipulate from what I can tell, but they're in kind of a weird situation that I'll touch on later. Important to note as well is that these are the minimum requirements for 3 stars. So if you're going for a speed 3-star spark, then the higher your trainee's speed is, the better chance you have of getting a 3-star spark, for example. I know I gassed up manipulating the system earlier, but they're all still heavily influenced by RNG. Though it has a higher chance, it's not guaranteed. You can still get a Guts blue spark despite having 1200 speed and spend the rest of your weekend in bed from the trauma. Pink sparks to a degree can be manipulated if you pick a character with limited A-rank aptitudes like Manhattan Cafe, for example, since her only aptitudes would be turf, late surge, or long distance provided you didn't boost anything else. If you're having trouble getting to the threshold, you might want to bring more support cards than is normally considered a good idea to try and get higher stats. Speaking of which, though they're not as easily influenced, pink sparks are probably the 2nd most important sparks you can get. I too wish we lived in a world where the star count being higher meant they actually appeared more often, but if you want to build Uraura to win the Arima Keenan, then you could do a lot worse for yourself than having 9-star turf and or long distance legacy units, although they won't push you to S at the initial inheritance event at the beginning of the year. If you want to build a certain type of unit, then you're going to need sparks that push your aptitudes to at least A. For reference, if you have anything below A, then you're actually taking a hit to your stats during a race. A B rank in tracker distance will lower traits like acceleration, velocity, and wit by anywhere from 10 to 15%, while being an A rank will offer no increase or decrease to your stats. An S-rank aptitude, however, will increase those traits by 5 to 10%, and that's why I'm forced to use this Tokai Teo. Basically, if you want to build a long-distance King Halo because Triple Crown King is your one true dream like mine is, you're gonna want to make sure she's at least A-rank in that distance. Then maybe you can use her as a legacy unit herself and send the whole world spiraling into madness. Green sparks are questionably helpful, as you do get a hint and or discount when you get them, but unique skills passed on by inheritance will be a bit weaker than if they were on their original units. That doesn't make them unusable, but you are going to get slightly less benefit from them as opposed to if they were on and especially leveled up on the character they originally belonged to. You'll get hints for your main legacy unit skills at the beginning of training, with chances for their legacy unit's unique skills at the following inheritance events. White sparks can either be skill hints or boosts based on the races your legacy units have won. To nobody's surprise, skill hints naturally have a chance to be inherited at the inheritance events and offer a chance for skills that the legacy unit knows to be passed down to the unit you're training. Learning both sets of double circle skills, like firm conditions or long corners for example, also seemingly marginally boost the odds of getting that skill as a white spark. If you want a good collection of skill sparks, you might want to bring a deck where a lot of skills are on offer for the aptitude you want, so bring in cards like Mihono Bourbon if you want frontrunner skill white sparks for example. As for the race sparks, these appear depending on what races were won during the career mode. If your legacy umamusume entered and won the same race as the unit you're training did, you also get a boost to that spark, so in this case it might be better to use middle and long distance legacy units for those participating in races like the Tennoshos and Triple Crown races of the world, since your training unit would be participating in similar races. Okay, so much for a brief recap. One final note I'll make on this point is that you'll have your full legacy here, but seemingly for all sparks apart from blue ones, the odds to inherit sparks from grandparents are halved. That's not a known fact, but it is speculated as far as I can tell. But let's say you're totally not a meta-following data analyst, and instead you want to build the strongest gold ship possible. What should you try and use for legacy units? The answer is, it depends! I know you come here for the real help. In reality, it all kinda starts and ends with blue sparks. If you care about the competitive aspect of the game, such as Champions Meeting, then you're gonna wanna have a legacy unit with both of their parents also having a 3-star spark, otherwise known as 9-star sparks. This is already a tall task, but by keeping at the grindstone, it is eventually possible. Depending on what you can train and what you train for, you really can't go wrong. Don't wanna train guts at all? Bring a 9-star guts unit. Scared you won't get enough speed rainbow trainings and look like an idiot on the internet? Use a 9-star speed unit. Realistically speaking though, if you want a 9-star legacy unit, you're probably gonna want either stamina or power. In current year, nobody needs help training speed, and guts and wit are ignored by incredibly handsome talking heads who don't know what they're talking about. So to use Gold Ship as an example again, I'd probably recommend bringing as many stamina sparks as you can, since she excels in long distance, so you can focus on speed and power. I would recommend building legacy units based on who you want to train. So for example, if you want to train Manhattan Cafe, you'd want to build legacy units that probably have 9-star stamina sparks, since she's primarily also a long distancer, and focus on turf, late surger, and long distance pink sparks if you can. I'd also try and bring a middle distance pink spark, probably on a grandparent, since she starts with a B aptitude and her career mode demands she participate in middle distance races, so in the long run it'll save you some headache. But just bear in mind that if you do that, the middle distance pink spark will enter her pool of what she can give as a legacy unit later. Another reason I'd recommend that middle distance spark on a grandparent is because it's less likely that it gets passed down during an inheritance event unless you really want S tier middle distance Cafe, which sure is an option. You'll also want to pick characters who race in similar races to Cafe, so racers like Gold Ship and Asian Flash for example, who specialize in middle and long distances as back-end racers would be good options. If you don't want to build legacy units for a specific character, then mixing your pink sparks as much as you want is also acceptable, but not really recommended. That's how we end up with Pace Chaser Vodka. Let's change up the examples. If your idea was to train the ultimate dirt runner Taiki Shuttle, you might want to try and choose legacy units that have at least one pink spark with at least 1 star for dirt, 4 stars for front runner because it's obviously the best strategy, and the rest in middle distance so you can finally beat the Tokyo Daishoten like I know you haven't, or otherwise maybe challenge the Triple Tiara races. On top of getting to A rank by using all those sparks, she'll also have a chance to reach S rank at inheritance events like I said earlier. Green sparks I don't personally prioritize, but hey, I can be wrong. It's happened before. And then of course there are the white sparks, which you can hopefully get a decent amount of, but if you have bad white sparks, that isn't exactly the end of the world. It's just on the edge of that point. Aside from sparks, there's also the affinity rating you see here. Contrary to popular belief, this actually does matter, as this is what determines the likelihood of sparks being passed down. The compatibility between two legacy units depends a lot on factors like whether or not they won the same G1 races, how many races they won, whether or not Cygames thinks these horses would go to KFC in real life, you know. Complicated stuff. I would recommend going for at least single circle affinity, but double circle is of course what would be considered ideal. It seems to be that if you have double circle affinity, you're guaranteed all 6 blue sparks from your legacy units as opposed to the single circle, which gets you at least 4 for example. The best advice I can give is that if you're trying to build a specific legacy unit, just keep ramming your head into the wall and eventually you'll get through. It's the tried and true method. While gaming the system isn't exactly something that's very controllable, I did end up getting 2-star and even 3-star blue sparks for the categories I wanted in a few runs, so when Tachyon eventually does decide to get her damn groove on and show up, then I can have 9-star stamina legacy Hayahide and I can finally build an Uma who can win a Champions Meeting race. It's also important to note that while it's still a good idea to complete your career mode when building a legacy unit, you don't necessarily need to have the best stats ever, apart from where blue sparks are concerned with the minimum of 600 and ideal level of 1100. It's totally acceptable to build legacy units that don't end up on your team trials roster. I swear that's what I was doing. I'm not bad at the game. Stop making fun of me. And they said I wouldn't need to use Punnett squares in real life. Who's the one who didn't pay attention in class now?